She was easy.
Hey, Carl, if you can, wave at us. Thank you, all right. We'll
Give it a thumbs up, not something else.
That's poster wave, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to use the thumb instead of the middle finger. Thank you, good morning, everyone. For those on the call, thank you very much. We just got a few of us here in the room this morning. We're running 4 or 5 minutes late, so we'd like to go ahead and get started. We had really good attendance at the first 2 meetings yesterday afternoon and early evening. The early evening went better than the afternoon one, but we certainly appreciate everybody being on the call this morning. This is a open format where we encourage you to jump in anytime and offer your discussion, our thoughts regarding both the North Course and the South Course, because your thoughts on the South Course will help frame their thinking on the North Course a little bit. So we currently have all of you muted, but you will be able to unmute yourself when you want to speak. When you're not speaking, we'd ask you to put yourself back on mute so that we don't hear your dog, delivery person, or spouses. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and let us take off.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody this morning. Hope everybody has their coffee and breakfast. So my name is Jason Straka. This is Patrick Burton. Patrick and I have worked together for quite a long time. We like to do these focus group meetings. Hopefully everybody can hear me really well. We like to do these focus or stakeholder meetings, we call them. It's more for us to learn. So a little less than we're happy to answer questions, but that's not really the purpose of this. The purpose is to solicit feedback and opinions and really hear from all of you. We can spend as little or as much time this morning as everybody would like. And, topics that we would like to hear about, as Mr. Langley said, maybe some of the differences between the South Course and the North Course, what your expectations are of this project for the North Course, what you like or maybe would change about the North Course. We'd like to talk and hear from you about the practice facilities and the area around the clubhouse, about how you utilize it, what you might see, vision-wise, might see a little bit different. And so, again, it's just really an open discussion. If somebody would like to kick it off, if not, I can pick on somebody really easy as well. But why don't we get started from there?
You always have something to say, right?
I'm going to be patient.
Oh, no. So we encourage everyone to jump in.
Sometimes timing is
Help me to unmute them all.
Feel like,
Yeah. That's contrary to what I just said, but I'll just concur. Okay.
There was a question in the chat too, I think, Candy. I thought I saw something.
Yep, we'll go to the chat. You also can put questions in the chat.
Okay. Is there any direction or desire to reverse pole directions, say from east to west or over to west to east direction?
Good question. So we haven't even looked at any of that yet, right? So just to sort of frame this out in terms of process, is that we're in the data gathering mode right now. So Dan and his staff are doing a great job. We've got the GPS data trackers for all the people who are here in town. We've got well over 200 plus and growing. So we're getting a lot of excellent data. And then, of course, we're right in the middle of the survey, which I think we said until the 13th, if that was correct. And I did not look this morning, but as of last night, we had about 650 participants already. So we've got a ways to go, obviously, because it's a large club, but we're getting great feedback. And then also we've got behind the scenes the civil engineers doing their due diligence, getting us information as far as base mapping and wetland mapping, so environmental areas, those types of things. And so truly, we have not looked at anything to do with the side of the golf course yet. So we're just absorbing and gathering as much as we can right now.
Yeah.
So when it does come time, we will look at doing things such as reversing whole directions, but we haven't done that yet.
I have a question related to that, John Woggy and Janiston. We have a fairly extensive knowledge of the wildlife on the North Course. We're members of the Audubon Committee. We know where there are breeding great horned owls and herons and a few other birds. And we're wondering sort of when would be a good time to be able to provide input on that in relation to, I would assume it's going to be later during the design process, but it is, unlike the South Course, it is very rich in wildlife and nesting habitat for birds and aquatic life and so on. Is there a sense of when in the schedule that input might be valuable to you?
Absolutely. So you can do it now if you would like. So it depends on what type of format you want to give that to. You can write those things in the survey. If you'd rather actually just write an email to us, that's fine too.
Okay, well,
you.
well, that's something we'd be very happy to do. And we're not going to be back. We're in New Hampshire now. We'd be back in October on the ground, but we're planning on going to the Rhode Island meeting anyway. We can either bring you something then or send it to you. Start that process. That's good.
Great.
Yeah. All right.
Bring something around. Yeah. Can is there a plan for all the pine trees that are, you know, there are a lot of pine trees that are dying on the course and dead and dying. And so we're wondering if there's any plan to replace them with other pines.
We haven't got that far yet. Like I said,
Okay.
we're still gathering, right? And part of this is we'll be doing, tree inventory, looking to see which ones are there. The actual physical location of some of the golf holes potentially could even shift. So that would impact immediately, obviously, some of the trees, even to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Brunel's got her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. My overall question, I guess, is, and I've noticed this in some of the research or the questions that you've sent out about benchmarking ourselves against other clubs in Florida. And I guess, I'm not an A player, I'm a B player. The North Course, in my humble opinion, is quite pleasant. It's very accommodating. But I do play with some A players who have a perspective that maybe if you moved a few tee boxes, it would make it a bit more challenging. And so I guess my overall question is, are we trying to make this course something completely different, or can we maybe just take some small steps to make it more challenging for the people who are better golfers who want a bit more of that challenge? I personally don't. As I said, I'm completely comfortable on the North Course. I like the way it plays. I like the way it's laid out. I love the nature that's around. And I'm just wondering if a $7.5 million overhaul to a course is necessary when maybe we can just move a couple of tee boxes for the A players and give them what they're looking for. And
That's a good point.
not necessarily go through the whole rip up everything, kill everything, round up everything, and to what avail?
It's a good question. So I'll tell you to what avail. So the nice thing about what we found about your club is that they're very understanding and proactive about capital expenditures and really how long things last. So we were even discussing this morning about condition of the greens and the quality of the greens and how they're starting to age themselves out, and providing a very difficult circumstance for Joe, who's sitting here in the corner with us, to produce consistent, excellent conditions. So all your infrastructure definitely has a life cycle, and that, what I mean by infrastructure, is it's your irrigation system, your greens, your bunkers, and the physical grass that's on the surface of it. So if you take that as a whole, we talked about this yesterday on the South Course, for example, when you're talking about the overall cost, that infrastructure replacement and improvement is about 75% of the overall cost estimate or budget. So then the question becomes, what, for the next 25%, what can we as designers give you to take the best parts of the North Golf Course and keep them and even improve them? And the, I wouldn't say worst, but, you know, just for theatrics' sake, the worst parts of the golf course, and make substantial improvements there. We have no idea if those improvements or changes are slight or dramatic. Again, we're just starting in this process. And part of that is talking to all of you so we can understand that. So, you know, things, for example, we've heard a lot in the past couple of days about the North Course being accommodating, playable. We've also heard from some skilled golfers saying, you know, we would like a little bit more of a challenge without making it overly difficult for, you know, for people that we play with, you know, who may not be quite as good. And so, you know, that is starting, you know, that's a very common theme, right? So that's sort of rising to the top, and that's how we start to define what the goals are.
A question from Mr. McKay. That hand wait.
Go ahead. Unmute.
Hey. Bill, Bill,
With a question.
I'm sorry, is it me, Bill?
Yep, you're up.
Bill, a couple
Yeah,
questions.
it's Nick Amagon in Buffalo. I wanted to make okay.
You're a little choppy, but keep talking.
We have two people. We have Mr. Amagon talking and Bill McCauley talking. So
Hello?
we have to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's Mr. Was it McCauley? McCauley. Yeah, Mr. McCauley, you're up.
Bill, Bill, good morning. I hope you can hear me. Bill, my question is kind of a two-part. One is there's a bit of chatter that's been going around since the previous meetings regarding the practice facilities, putting green, the fountain, the chipping areas and all that. Again, I asked the earlier question, I'm kind of curious how that morphed from the North Course rehab into all the practice facilities. I never heard that in the budget. I'm kind of curious, is that again a direction from the management or from the architectural firm to be involved in working on that in addition to the North Course?
So the answer I will give you is that we redid the driving range and the putting green as part of the South Course project. We did not touch the short game area. So the short game area has always been in the scope of work. But once the board began looking at everything this spring and looking at the area over there, which we kind of call no man's land between number 9 green on south and number 1 tee, and when we got all the survey results back, it came back a desire to consider a new comfort station or halfway house. There's been some discussion as to whether or not the putting green is large enough to accommodate our groups during the season or not. There's been some discussion about whether or not the starter shack should be moved out of the middle of the road into the side of the road. So we thought it was wise to include in their scope of work, taking a look at all of that area around the clubhouse to see if, from their point of view, if there's any opportunity for improvements.
Thank you. I think that scope of work and that evaluation is fits a demand that we have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Mr. Amagon.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was fortunate in that I played the North Course literally since the day it opened, which I think was 1979 or 1980, as I recall. And one of my observations always was the terrain was horribly flat. There was really no contour to it whatsoever. Number two, when you got on the 6th tee, on most days, you played 4 holes in a row directly into the wind. And lastly, the 18th hole, it could play in November, December, January. You're playing in the afternoon. You have a brutal sun right in your face. So those are just some observations I had that I would ask you to incorporate. The most important of which, in my opinion, is to incorporate some significant shaping and terrain. We have a golf course that is as flat as the parking lot, and it doesn't lend itself to interesting golf or to good drainage, in my opinion. So that's just my thought for today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you guys kind of identified that early on, did you, Jason?
We did, yeah, that was something that we know that there's an opportunity to provide more elevation change, not necessarily mounding, so that's different. That's more of a stylistic shaping exercise. And in fact, we probably would suggest getting rid of some of the mounds to improve some of the homeowners' views. But in terms of having some, actually providing some downhill tee shots, maybe a few elevated approach shots even, there is some opportunity there to create a lot more visual and strategic interest. Now, there's part of that goes into the 25% of the nice to have or want to have, versus the 75% need to have. But again, we're going to provide that information to you, and then you're going to make that decision. So we talked a little bit about the practice facilities. Can we hear a little bit of feedback? I'm curious about things such as length or width of the range. Do you have to wait on the range tee? Yesterday, we also spent a little touchy subject, I understand. What if we had the opportunity to make some significant improvements if we altered the pond and maybe the waterfall? Anybody want to share some thoughts or opinions?
I could jump in on that as well if I could. Yeah, I was very frustrated after we finished the south renovation with a new practice tee that we're still using mats 2 or 3 days a week. And I hate hitting a golf ball off a mat. It's not realistic. And I was disappointed, and I guess it's a function of acreage. And we have so many golfers. I understand that, but I'm just looking for some way to get more hitting space so we don't have to use those darn mats all the time.
Anybody here hit it or have friends that hit it out of the range?
Say that again?
My son,
Your son does?
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, well, that's an issue. You're standing on one end of the range, and balls can roll up on while you're hitting from the other end of the range. So that's potentially an issue.
Unfortunately, we're getting into situations where we're finding clubs that have double-ended tees like that, and people have been getting hit. It's very dangerous. How about the pond and the waterfall? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on several things, if possible. One is I think the practice areas are one of the best parts of the entire course system. I think the short game practice areas are very unique to most golf courses I've ever played on or belonged to. And so I certainly keeping those in shape and well managed is a great idea. The pond on the waterfall is kind of a signature viewpoint for a lot of people dining and so on. So doing too much with that might be a problem, but it certainly is enough room there. Maybe you're talking in terms of putting a starter shack along the edge of that, or is that what the idea was? Or?
So the reason why we brought it up even in the past couple of meetings, just to sort of frame this out, was that we know that if the pond and the waterfall, at least part of it or more of it gets filled or moved, that there's opportunity to lengthen the range, maybe widen the range, maybe make a bigger putting green. So sort of what we learned yesterday is, so that comment, by the way, about dining, and it's a pretty view from the dining area, is that's been brought up a number of different times. So, but for us as architects, what we look at is like, okay, is it the specific waterfall and that feature which are important, or is it the view from the dining which is important? Because what if we were able to produce just as nice or even a better feature, but it's different? And so that's how we look at it, right? And
Yeah, I think, the idea of maybe moving that pond and waterfall a bit to the right and increasing the length of the range is not a bad idea. One of the things about the driving range in terms of danger and things like that is if you're on the tee boxes on the first hole of the North Course, I'm sorry, the 10th hole of the North Course, there are a lot of golf balls coming over that direction. And I'd hate to see us have to put a screen up or something, but I don't know if there's any way to better manage that. If particularly if you lengthen the driving range, whether that's going to bring more balls into play on the forward tees on that hole.
Be the south, I think you meant to say.
South course. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the first, the 10th hole of the South Course that is getting a lot of stray golf balls from the driving range.
we didn't hear that yesterday. That's good to hear. Thank you. Everybody else, do you see a lot of that? Air and golf balls on the south? For the most part, they end up in the pine straw, left of 10.
They do.
Will an occasional one head into the fairway? Yeah, I think, yeah. But mostly it's the trees knock them down, and they end up in that pine straw, which is still in play on number 10, but it is a fact. But thank God, you've got a problem. Over my 20 years, no one's ever been here.
Just jinxed yourself. I think that's more of an issue than, of course, than balls rolling up from one end to the other. I've never seen that become a danger, that a ball from one end of the driving range has any chance of hitting somebody on the other end. They occasionally will roll up close, but I don't know.
Well, I can honestly say that it certainly happens on a daily basis. If you wanted to have more information, just ask the instructors that are down the other end.
Okay.
The direct instruction. She dodges balls every day.
Really? Wow, okay.
With a football helmet and face mask, call it a day.
It's daily protocol when it starts happening. She's immediately on the radio. Someone's hitting to the other end, and the team immediately has to go find out who's talented enough to hit it that far. We immediately stop it. So much so we've protected ourselves. We have signs out on the driving range now behind each hitting area that says maximum distance, and that's the reason for those signs.
Okay.
On the subject of the waterfall, and this did come up in the discussions yesterday, and my strong thought in that discussion was, if you're asking me, where my top priority is the quality of the golf course, we get one answer. If you're asking my wife, you get a very different answer, right? From her point of view, the view from the clubhouse is the key. And so if there were some other beautiful view, I don't know what it would be, but she would probably be happy. But my main point is, depends who you ask, of course.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon. I mean, that's, we face that all the time. Obviously, if we could create the win-win, where we do both, that would be the ideal.
So the question becomes is, what's the value proposition there? Is how much area can you really pick up to make a difference on the range versus the investment that you would have to make in that corner?
That's right. Yeah. And we don't know the answer to that. We haven't looked at that yet. But that's why these meetings are so valuable, because we're gleaning that information, right? When we can obviously have our own thoughts, opinions, just because of how many practice ranges and clubs that we visit, but knowing that his director of instruction has to wear a body armor suit, on a daily basis, folks, I mean, those are the types of things that lead to lawsuits. So just put it out there, right? I mean, you've got a responsibility to protect yourself, but also to protect your staff. And if that's a known situation, that's something that you'd be really prudent to try and solve.
No doubt, but, I go back to my question, I don't know that picking up that corner is going to solve that issue.
Oh, I don't know either, Bill. It very well may not. Yeah, I don't know.
Because if we even got 20 yards,
Right.
we would ask on the back end, we would ask to probably eliminate the 20 yards on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
So we really wouldn't have increased our hitting space, which would lead to probably still the use of the mats.
Yeah, because your issue is when you have to move people up on the front of the range.
Yeah, the issue is
for the use of the tee box.
yeah, unless you go that front 20 yards, that's when it's really dangerous.
Unless you're able to go wider.
Unless you're able to go wider. That's right.
Well, what about thinking of the back end of the range? There's a pond behind the instruction area. There's any possibility of squeezing a little bit more out of that end?
Well, then we're gonna have a little bit of a fight with the residents of Osprey over there.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that was looked at, and you got no vote. They don't want that pond touched.
But it looks like the pond belongs in the club, property line, so
They'll probably have to deal with it.
you still have to deal with it, that's right.
The interesting thing about, two thoughts, I have a further comment to make, I'll save for later. One about the practice area and two about the pond, the waterfall. Might be helpful, Harry's point is kind of well taken. You have two different points of view. I'm going to come from more of the golf standpoint. I think the waterfall is kind of nice and attractive. I think we did look at it at one point several years ago about taking it out. A study was done to see why it was there, if I'm not mistaken. And that waterfall itself just recycles water. So the pond is not visible from the clubhouse. Right. So the size of the pond, to me, is, I'll use a term, superfluous.
I'm going to say inconsequential.
Inconsequential.
Right, I get it now.
To the view and to the waterfall, because all it's doing is recycling. The pond itself is actually quite unattractive if you look at it. Yes. So if the goal is to get more of a hitting range, which it was originally, when we originally redid it and decided, at some point, someone decided not to touch the pond. Perhaps, and to help the people that are more inclined to look at the view as they look out, which means you got to be looking one way as you're reading. It might be helpful to see if you have ideas that might be other than that waterfall, which has in and of itself some issues, which is maintenance and making sure that it's clean, and some costs associated with it that would be cost effective if in fact there was something a little nicer. I don't know what that might be, but
We do.
I think we did. So that's why I point maybe perhaps a schematic that could be shown to everybody where they go, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that. As to the practice area, two thoughts.
get pretty crowded on the main practice green. I'm going to bark here at someone since we put a bocce ball courts in there. I'm not sure where that came from, but we lost putting green space. To me, a golf course can't have enough practice putting and/or practice areas to the extent that they're capable of normally being limited by acreage, which we are. We have several areas to expand. Two in my mind. One is that area that Bill referred to as what would you call it? No man's land. No man's land. I kind of call it the Bermuda Triangle of Quail Ridge. Which would be optimum.
Hey, how you doing?
Or people
Good,
could
thank you. Good questions, by the way. Comment. I see a comment.
The other area could be
Which guy?
a putting green out by the entity.
Yeah, exactly.
And now getting back to the practice area, and then I'll stop. To me, we have some space there that is also dead. We don't use, which is one specifically. It's a little tee box close to the parking lot, which seems to never, apparently was hit off of once when we opened it up. I wasn't here and has never been used since. Maybe that's because Bill's worried about getting hit over there. I'm not sure.
No, there's plenty to come over there without.
In the target green area, there's actually a tee box there that was built just for visual effects. Okay.
I guess.
We were told not to ever use it.
Well, to the extent you can add, I mean,
Because no one uses it all the time, it would be just a disaster.
I think the rethinking of usage of all that space there is needed.
Was certainly an opportunity.
Opportunity, whether it's 3 greens, one's putting, one's chipping, one's sand, I mean, some. We probably should be thinking, in my mind, humble opinion, of moving the 50-yard, 40-yard, 50-yard, 30, somewhere out to the main driving range where there are areas where you can hit to, which we don't have right now.
One of the other keys in my mind in terms of the practice facilities is that our new South Course provides a lot of short game challenges, but we have no practice facility to practice the shot required by the South Course, and we should have. Totally agree.
One of the best practice facilities in short game areas I've seen is Berkeley Hall Club, Bluffton, South Carolina. And their range is spectacular. And one of the things they did on their range that I really liked is on their end where they had their learning center, they went out there and they did like 3-foot diameter circles that they just did in sand and put a short post in 10-yard increments. So you could practice that 30-yard, 40-yard, 50-yard, 60-yard, and you knew exactly where it was at. You kind of dial it in, and there was just some neat things at that driving range that I thought they had really done a nice job on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need more.
Yeah, those are typically called as wedge ranges, and sometimes they're off on their own, sometimes they're incorporated into the actual.
Yeah, that was right there with the learning center, kind of just to the right of their learning center part.
Mm-hmm. What other things? What other comments or questions are out there this morning?
Got a shy group this morning.
I know. I just started. Not that early.
I have a question that relates back to the whole sort of fairway water interface design. We have a major problem in the North Course, as you know, of erosion. A lot of it's along the canal, and that we have to deal with, I assume, in conjunction with the county or something. but a lot of the banks on the North Course, particularly I'm thinking about the third hole, there's a very steep entry from the fairway down. And I wonder whether there's any possibility of thinking about flattening out. And I know we want to put more elevation in, but to have the, instead of balls rolling out and straight down into the water, if that slope was brought down gradually to the water, or if more vegetation along the water edge to try and hold some of that erosion.
So there's a couple of things with that. One would be, so the canal, that typically is going to be mandated, that particular design by government agency.
Right.
And we have asked the civil engineer, already to go and find out what leeway we have with it. So, for instance, because it does impact playability in a number of ways, throughout the North Course. So, not saying that there's a particular instance where we're advocating to do it already, but we just want to know what the rules of the game are.
Right.
Can we pipe it? Can we move it? Can we change the banks of it? And so we're, that's happening behind the scenes, right? So that conversation's happening behind the scenes yet. I don't have any information to share yet because it hasn't been given to us yet, but it's going on. The pond banks themselves, I agree with you, that we need to look at stabilizing those and whether they are on areas where we're put back into native vegetation, or habitat and erosion control. There may be some opportunities there. That becomes a win-win with environmental habitat, but, also maintenance. Places where the lake then intersects the turf and on the golf side of it, providing there are different products now that are employed around to use to stabilize those banks and stop erosion.
Good.
Now, as far as the walk downs into them, that's another thing that we're still waiting to understand is that the fluctuation in water levels from in season, versus out of season. The flat, unfortunately, what happens in Florida is that typically you get a big bounce, right, in those lakes. The bigger the bounce and the flatter the entry into them is, the bigger the flooding area footprint that you get.
Right.
So those are issues that definitely have been identified. We're going to work on it the best that we can within the rules of the game.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments on that. It's that the whole pond system in the North Course, particularly on the west side of the course, is a very interesting one, with their tunnels from the 17th pond on the 17th underneath to the pond on the 10th and so on that have fallen apart. And I think that whole connecting all those ponds better, the way I imagine used to be. I guess Joe can tell us about where the major issues are on that, but that seems to be a major way of controlling the water level and all that system.
Yeah, those lakes are, obviously they're interconnected and then also connected to the development, right? So while they're pretty, from the golf side of things, and, they're there also for strategy hazards, but they're really primarily there from a functional standpoint of providing stormwater areas to accumulate for the development.
And I would expect that we would do the same thing on the north that we did on the south, where when we separate the irrigation systems, and we place the new irrigation system in, that we would place some recharge valves to mix the effluent back into that pond water there, just like we've done on the south, in order to keep those levels at a higher position year round. So we don't get into the drought where the lakes drop and we get a lot of criticism.
Yep.
I guess it's.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And Bill, you've probably heard some of this before. I'm not an architect, so this is not, my feeling is not how do you do things or what we should do. That's really, I think, why we're hiring you. But I do have an overall thing which I believe is important. And it really doesn't have anything to do directly with design, and whether it's a hard course or an easy course. The my thought is that, as a member, I feel a responsibility to be a good steward for the future members. In other words, what do we leave? Because when we redo a golf course, we're not doing it for us necessarily. We're gonna play it for the next 5, 10, 15, maybe 15 years, hopefully. And we will be playing at various skill levels during that period of time. Most likely, for most of us, deteriorating skill levels.
I'll bet.
But that does not necessarily mean that we think about designing a golf course for that. It's my belief that it's our responsibility to be good stewards and to look at building something and providing something for the next 40 and 50 years. And for the new golf members, which will be younger and hopefully more accomplished, which is who I believe represents the future of the club, the future of what Quail Ridge is, and who we want to attract. So we have an opportunity, I think, to accomplish that. So to me, it's more the legacy that we leave for the future that's important. The legacy I would like to leave is, yes, we have one, I believe, great course, a good course on the south. Does it have its challenges? Yes. Is it hard for some people? Yes. Is it hard? But that's golf. You're going to play the game of golf. You're going to play different skill levels, and some are going to be better than others. But I think the real issue is what type of course do we want to leave for the future? Truly, what type of course? And I think that's really our challenge to deliver to you that message of what do we want out of Ryan Straka. I know what I want. That necessarily might not be what everyone wants. But I want the best of what you can give us. Because that's the future of this club. And that's what will attract, I think, the future golfers. I mean, I've got another whatever it is years, and I will continue, which I firmly believe in, which is play a shorter and shorter course. The course I'm playing now is 250 yards shorter than the course we started playing when I first got here. That's within 8 years. And the reason why that is because golf courses and golf holes are designed for approaches to be hit from certain areas with certain clubs. And it's incumbent on the golfer, not the architect, but the golfer to play the levels and the distances of the course that meet those goals. Not to change the course to meet the golfer's capability. And as far as the north specifically, look, I mean, it someone said, a nice course to play. Yes, it is a nice course to play. Is it, but if you play it and really think about it, most people, I think, will find that on most of the par fours, you are hitting the exact same club or just about all the time. I heard that. All the time. Now, is that okay? Perhaps. Is that interesting and mentally stimulating? It is not. Is it comfortable? Yes. Is it challenging? No. And to me, the whole point of golf, why do you play different golf courses? You play different golf courses to get different experiences, I think. But it really gets back to what do we want to leave? What's the overall? What's our objective? And what is our stewardship for the future? I think Quail's done a great job with past generation of members to keep passing on a better and better place. And I think that's what I like to see us. But not only just as Brad said,
28th year here the first part of next week. And I was doing a little math last night, and in the 8 years, there's 440 new memberships that 8-year period. So you nearly turned over half of the membership here in 8 years. And so you're right about being great stewards for the next generation. Absolutely.
And I think, but I hope a lot of members keep in mind that it's not for the next 4 or 5 or 3 years, it's actually for the next 50. We're asking something from you.
I think Bill may have articulated what may be the central driving question when we go to the whole membership. Are we trying to please the current membership, or are we trying to attract the future membership? And based on all the discussions I've heard, I think that a lot of people will fall on each side of that question. But I'm on the same side as Bill. Plan for the future, not to accommodate the current aging group.
Why can't you do both? Okay.
If you can, fantastic.
I'd like to make a comment on that if I can. I agree that designing for the future is important, but I'd like to know one statistic before we decide which end of the golfing spectrum to go for, the high handicapper end or everybody end or the low handicapper. What is the distribution at any point in time of Quail Ridge over the next 40 years of age groups? Are you really expecting it to head toward the 40 and 50-year-olds? Or is it going to have the same composition of, 20% this age, 40% that age, and so on? So it seems to me that the question that relates to your discussion there is, what is the age structure distribution going to be in Quail Ridge over the next 20 years? Is it really going to shift toward a younger age group entirely, or is it going to maintain the spread that it has now? That then means accommodating the same age group that distribution we have now 20 years from now, or is that going to change? And I think I'm sure that architects have a lot of ways to deal with that. I mean, you can use different clubs if you play from different tee boxes, and so on. But I do think we have to, before we jump to thinking that the population of Quail Ridge is going to get younger, we have to sort of actually back that up with some data on whether the age structure will be staying pretty close to the same.
If I may add a comment or two about that. So those are good exact thoughts, right? But I don't even necessarily know that it's the shifting of an age group. Mm-hmm. So first of all, Mr. Kane, I think that our goal is always please your current members as well as future members, right? That should always be the goal. Okay. I love your comments about leaving this legacy in this club for all those future generations. If I could take you to all of our different clubs projects right now, if you're willing to travel, you're more than welcome to come with us. Right, it's a road trip. But it's even if your demographics didn't shift much, what's happening though that we're finding is that those younger generations now, and maybe in the past 10 years, value things a little differently, and they're used to different technologies and the way that they use the facilities. So you have to think about it now that there may be generations who are in their 30s and 40s that in 15 years or so, they may match your current demographic here, but their experiences, they're going to carry those experiences with them. So for instance, they very much value social experiences. I know that that's important here to all of you, but to them it's even more so, right? My son and younger, it's more about accumulating experiences, right? So he can care less really what kind of car he drives, but he certainly cares about where he's gone on road trips and the courses that he's played with his friends type of a thing. Mm-hmm. And it's how they use those facilities or how they use technology. So you think about it right now, everybody's got their phone right, here. You know, and so if you go back a couple of generations, you know, they wouldn't even know what this was, right? And so we all go on and we, you know, log on and we do, so that's just our lifestyle now. And so, you know, this doesn't necessarily have much to do with golf, but that's just my point, is that nobody can live without it, right? So it's, you know, today's luxury is tomorrow's necessity. That's what's going to happen and is happening within your golf facilities. So things like the expansion of the practice range, people, you know, there's a greater focus on that. There are things such as putting courses. Yesterday we talked about par 3 golf courses within the range so that you have sort of, you know, wind down Wednesdays or whatever you want to call them, right? So these different social activities. So there's all these different really interesting ideas, you know, of how you design and use that facility. So those are the things that you're looking for, you know. Yes, you can create it to where it's fun now, but you're looking at those coming generations and going, well, how do they use golf courses? What do they enjoy? How can we incorporate that?
Yeah, and I would just say that, to further answer your question, we won't move the needle much on the average age here. We know that over the last 10 years, the average age of a joining member is 62 to 63 years old, but yet our average age member is still 72 to 73 years old. Why? Because you guys get here and you don't leave. There's something in the way. Keep you living longer and you don't leave. So
Sorry about that.
No, we're okay with it.
Good morning, Gavin Hayward. I'm probably the newest member on the group here. I'm only been in here for a week, so disclaimer, I haven't played the North Course. But my question revolves more around what is the duration and what is the impact on the course going to be? Is this a 2-year project over 2 summers? Is this 3 years? Are we trying to get it all done in a summer? I know there's a lot of planning yet to happen, but just wondering what the thoughts are there.
Yeah, I got it. So typically, well, I can tell you the timeline would be, we would try to go to a vote this March or April on this project. And the plan would be to begin the work April 1 of the following year, 2023. So there would be a little bit of make-ready work beginning in February or so of that year. And then we would start work early with a goal of being back on the golf course by late fall. And so last time around, I think we opened November 23rd or something like that. We were shooting for November 15th. We opened November 23rd. So it's about a 7-month build and grow in process. And you do it over the summer when 70% of our members are not here. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple comments I'd like to make. Good morning. It's very interesting discussion, and it's very thought-provoking. And I would like to get to the legacy that we're leaving for future members. And let's see, Quail Ridge has been around for what, 50 years now? And pardon me?
Almost, yes, ma'am.
Almost, okay. So, and a lot of our members, their grandparents or parents lived here. And obviously there's a lot of things about Quail Ridge that people love in order to have family members and future family members live here. So I think it's really important to retain all of that when we're thinking about the future and what future members will want. And also, I mean, in the past almost 50 years, less than 50 years of Quail Ridge, I believe, I've only been here for 6 years, but I believe the golf course and other things have been changed several times. So we know there's no way to make a one and done, change, no matter how much we might like to do that. So, and as one of the architects said, there's the younger generation likes the new technology, and they'll be carrying that with them into the future. But 10 or 15 years ago, we had no idea what that new technology was. Nobody did. And things are changing and developing constantly. So I think we can't really think that we're planning that far into the future when we, undertake this project. That sounds like something needs to be done because of maintenance issues. But I think that's an important thing to remember, especially in terms of being good stewards of everything that we have here, including all the members that we have. And we're pretty much a full house right now, which is great. And I applaud everybody that's helped make that happen. And I also want to say, I just want to throw in my opinion about the waterfall. And I think that is a, distinguishing feature of Quail Ridge and the Quail Ridge brand. And if the architects have other equally desirable features, I would like to see drawings or see what their plans are. If you go to the Little Club, for example, one of their distinguishing features is that Chinese red bridge from the dining room. And, dining rooms are an important part of the golfing experience as well. So just a few thoughts that I wanted to throw out there. Thank you.
Thank you. So question, the Little Pub Red Bridge, is it just, does that go over a recirculated stream, or what is it? I'm not sure.
The Red Bridge, I think she was alluding to another facility, but
Right.
yeah. It's not an iconic.
It's over here, off of that.
What's the bridge, though?
It's a par 3 club.
Yeah, it's got a little pond there.
Little Pub.
No, the little pond. Oh, it's right next to St. Andrews.
Oh, okay.
It's one of our reciprocals. It's a very, nice change from playing full out golf to go to the Little Club. It's been around for a long time. They have excellent dining facilities. I think it was built on the Gulfstream Polo Club grounds. Very happy to have them as reciprocals. It's a lot of fun.
Private?
Yes, it is private.
It's so true.
Yeah, you go past, you'll see it, there's a little entrance, it says St. Andrews.
Our Friday Front Slammers group played over here not long ago and had a great time. It's fun. It's all par, every hole is a par 3. You don't need many clubs.
So it doesn't have a lot of acreage.
Yeah, it's definitely for newer players, or, if you just want to kick back and relax. And it's, not the most challenging course in the world, but it's nice to have that variety. And nice to have the dining experience as well. And they have a long waiting list to get in. I don't know if anybody here has ever played the Little Club before.
Sounds like a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I couldn't really hear the discussion.
What else out there? Anything else on your list? We covered yesterday. I think so. Anything from yesterday? You want to bring up?
We haven't heard, as we have in the past, comments about particular holes on either the south or
Nobody vented this morning. Okay.
I'm okay with that. We don't have any amateur architects out there.
So So Mr. Kane said, he goes, we haven't heard much about, any particular holes, good or bad. Yesterday, there were quite a few comments about, certain holes on both the north and the south course. I don't know if there's anybody that has a need, to share. I'm sure everybody said that's okay. He's okay with that.
Well, I'd actually like to ask a question. I mean, I think most people complain a bit about the eighth hole because of how it narrows down the water problem. And the fact you've got a hazard on both sides of a very narrow area where there's not much leeway. I wonder a bit about what the cost benefit ratio is to the amount of sand on the north course. There are a lot of greens like the sixth hole, par 5. It's got a lot of hazard on the side, on one side, both the set of woods and a whole bunch of different sand traps. There are duplicate sand traps on a number of holes. How is the sort of expense of having sand traps relative to not sand traps? What is that like these days? I know it used to be sand traps were extremely expensive relative to grassy areas. Has that changed at all, or can we afford to get rid of a number of sand traps and keep the same difficulty? What's the thinking on that?
And so Joe can share his comments too, but typically, from club to club, sand bunkers are just as expensive to maintain than greens. Some places they even spend more money on them.
Right.
But also part of that is the type of sand, the drainage, and the liner that you would choose to put into it to, obviously, hopefully help alleviate some of that repair maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
We track a lot of those types of costs after the fact, clubs that have chosen certain liners, certain types of sand or bunker styles. In terms of then, the amount of sand, there are a couple of things, with that, one of which is that you have a few holes out there like your nines, which may not exactly fit into a particular design style, right? That hole is sort of an anomaly.
Right.
One thing is that design style sort of permeated all 18 holes, but it sort of, doesn't. So I think at the end of the day, the best choice is going to be and we're not advocating for a particular style yet. It's just that you choose one style and go with it.
Right.
My guess is that it won't be that one.
Right.
For obviously reasons. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear. I completely agree about the ninth hole. It's sort of totally out of the style and sort of unnecessary amount of sand there. I think the most important thing to me as a golfer is to be some degree of consistency among holes. Now, North course, of course, the bunkers are old and they're getting shallow and so on. So I know a lot of people complain about the comparison between those and the new South course bunkers, where you really don't have the same consistency anymore in the North course. But I also wonder whether, back-to-back sand traps whether there's another way to enhance the challenge without having that much sand is sort of the other question. It's a trade-off between the cost of maintaining bunkers and also having, challenges. But that's just
There is, so two things that go with that, one of which is that depending upon your golfer skill level, sand bunkers present different challenges. So if you watch the Players Championship, up the road there in Sawgrass, I mean, that place is infamous for golfers aiming for bunkers because they'd rather be in a bunker than some other place around the green, right? So again, different skill set. So, we don't necessarily want to be over, you don't want to have an over bunkered golf course. You want bunkers to be thought provoking. And, in many instances, it's not just there for, to penalize somebody. We use bunkers for different reasons, one of which could be safety. So we may be putting bunkers someplace where, maybe by a house or a road or whatever the case may be, because we're trying to get people to play away from there. They may be menacing in that regard. You may end up in there one day and you figure out this place is, it's a miserable thing, and I really don't have a great shot to the green now.
Well, I'll go that way again.
Yeah, we don't, exactly, so we're telling you, don't go there again, right? And granted, I mean, if we were all that good, we'd be on tour, but that, you get my point. Other times, we'll use bunkers, for example, to save your golf shots to a worse fate. You know, so while something may look incredibly intimidating, you might have water, then you might have a bunker, then you might have a play area, green, for example. We call those transition or saving bunkers. And so, you know, the idea is that if the bunker wasn't there, the ball would hit the bank and then kick into the water hazard. Well, so if I gave you the choice, you know, you want to be in the water hazard, or would you rather have a shot out of a bunker? Right, so we go through that whole process, you know, in determining. So in some instances, you know, bunkers aren't necessarily there to penalize. But I don't, you know, I think that the goal is to make it as aesthetically pleasing, as thought-provoking, and as playable as you can with the fewest amount of bunkers.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Living behind one of those, don't go in their bunkers. I'd like to see it a little bigger.
There you go.
All right, well, if there are no further questions, I think we're gonna wrap this session up for the day, but we'll give you an opportunity. If anybody else has questions, speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, well, thank you so much for participating this morning. We certainly appreciate it. There will be more opportunities as we go down the road in this process, you know, later on in the season. Once a bunch of you get back, there will be future town halls where we'll be showing kind of a work in progress and getting your feedback on that. So we certainly appreciate you taking the time today to be on the call this morning.
And please fill out the survey if you haven't done so.
All right. Well, thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Great job.